Sarah and Hagar. The story. God had promised to give Abraham and Sarah the son they had always desired, yet God had not presently confirmed when or how. At some point after Abraham had received this promise from God, Sarah and her husband were at their camp in the land of Canaan. She was doubting God's ability to fulfill what he promised and was considering what she could do about it. While pondering her next move, Sarah saw her maid, an Egyptian named Hagar, and knew she was the answer. She went to see her husband Abraham about her idea, and they arranged for Hagar to become the surrogate mother of their child, all without Hagar's knowledge. Sarah's plan backfired when Hagar conceived a child for Abraham. Sarah became very angry with her and demanded Abraham force Hagar to leave their presence. Abraham refused, telling his wife to deal with Hagar because she was under her authority, not his. After Abraham made his stance known, Sarah started treating Hagar harshly, till she fled Sarah and Abraham's camp and into the wilderness. Hagar travelled to a stream on the way to Shur. While there, the angel of the Lord appeared to her and asked what she was doing here. After Hagar told him, he commanded her to return to Sarah and Abraham, plus promised to make the descendants of her child a great nation. He also added, "Behold, you are with child, and you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he will live to the east of all his brothers." After her conversation, Hagar named this spring Beer-lahai-roi, the well of him that lives and sees me, and returned to her mistress. Months later, Hagar gave birth to a son and named him Ishmael as God commanded her. At some point after Isaac was born, Sarah saw him and Ishmael playing together. This displeased Sarah, and she demanded Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away permanently. This hurt Abraham. He didn't want to leave his son and believed this would anger God. However, God reassured him, saying, "Do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her, for through Isaac your descendants shall be named. And of the son of the maid I will make a nation also, because he is your descendant." Early the next morning, feeling at peace, Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael away from his and Sarah's camp. Yet Abraham did not send them away empty-handed. He gave them some bread and a skin full of water. Hagar and Ishmael left and travelled towards Beersheba. At some point on their journey, their water supply ran dry. Hagar sat on a rock opposite Ishmael, who she had placed under a bush. Both started crying, and Hagar called out to God. God heard Ishmael's tears and sent the angel of the Lord to comfort Hagar, telling her, "What is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad, where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him." Afterward God showed Hagar a well of water. She filled the skin and gave Ishmael a drink. When Ishmael grew, he married an Egyptian woman, became an archer, and lived in the wilderness of Paran. Digging deeper. We'll spend this section investigating a newly introduced character in the biblical story, who will appear later in Genesis, Exodus, and other books in the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord is an interesting character. He is only mentioned in the Old Testament, last mentioned in Zechariah 3:6. Many have identified that he acts as God, talks as God, and thinks as God, yet isn't God, but behaves like God at the same time. He speaks to Moses in the burning bush, leads the Israelites to the promised land, appears to Gideon before his 300 soldiers mission, and to Balaam's donkey when he was going to curse the Israelites. However, in both the King James, Geneva, and Wycliffe translations, the phrase "the angel of the Lord" is used in Matthew 1:20, 2:13, and 28:2, Luke 2:9, and Acts 5:19, 8:26, and 12:7 and 23. Yet in the New American Standard Bible, New International Version, Contemporary English Version, and Amplified Bible, the phrase in these verses is "an angel of the Lord." The reason for the change is unclear. Some have suggested that the one mentioned in the Old Testament differs from that in the New. Pre-incarnate Jesus in the Old and Gabriel in the New. The angel Gabriel was proposed because in Luke 1, the angel that appears to Zechariah refers to himself by said name when asked by Zechariah who he was. I don't see it this way, since in the King James, Geneva and Wycliffe translations, Luke 1:11 says, an angel, not the angel, like the other verses documented above, leaving it for me uncertain. But the angel of the Lord being the pre-incarnate Jesus makes more sense. The 7 translations mentioned before have the angel of the Lord recorded in the Old Testament, but not the New. This character behaves like God, acting and speaking in his place, like he is God. Yet the angel of the Lord treats God like he's distinct from him, but isn't, at the same time. And in some cases confusing those he speaks to whether he is or is not God. This idea of the angel of the Lord being God and also separate and distinct from him, but not, sounds a lot like Jesus' relationship with the Father and Holy Spirit, the Trinity, each their own entity, and still all God. In his letter, Jude plays on this idea in verse 5, linking Jesus to the Exodus from Egypt. The angel of the Lord is mentioned throughout the last 4 books of Moses, Exodus 3:2 and 14:19, and many verses in Numbers 22. Numbers 22 is interesting. This is one of the stories where this character and God are referenced to interchangeably. It says in verse 23, when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. Revelation 19 links Jesus to having a sword. Verse 15 says, from his mouth comes a sharp sword. Although one says hand and the other says mouth, both could be poetic or metaphorical. Nonetheless, it's an interesting connection. What to learn? What should we take away from the conflict between Hagar and Sarah from Genesis chapters 16 and 21? I believe the story teaches us the importance of patience and the consequences of conflict. Sarah's impatience for God to fulfill his promise to Abraham and herself led Sarah to use Hagar to achieve her heart's desire. Being used by people she respected and trusted hurt Hagar and caused intense problems between Hagar and her mistress Sarah. The tension between the two women culminated in Hagar fleeing from Abraham and Sarah on 2 separate occasions, returning after the first but not the second. How does this apply to us today? Today God makes promises to us all, big or small, and will bring them to fruition. It's important to be patient and wait for God's timing because he knows what is best for you and those around you. However, even if we do things our way first, God can and will turn them for our and his benefit. Not the final outcome, but God may give you an Ishmael.